Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and welcome to TFR Insights, a show where we deep dive into cloud native technologies. And today we have with us Anshu Agarwal, CEO and co-founder of Nimbella. Anshu, first of all, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Swapnil. It's a pleasure to be on the show today.
Since you are a co-founder of the company, I would love to know a bit about the history and story of the company, also the name.
Oh, absolutely. That's a wonderful question and dear to my heart. Okay, I'm first going to go through my background, which will give you some flavor of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I used to work in neural networks for speech and face recognition back in 1990s, and now I'm dating myself. When the compute was limited and the data was hard to get, we didn't make much progress then because of these limitations, and AI actually didn't feel like a reality at that time. After that, my cloud computing journey started, and at a CDN company, Speedera, which was also co-founded by my current co-founder. I would actually say that CDN was really the first cloud computing service, and after Speedera got acquired, I worked at 3 other startups, which were all acquired. In fact, the story was that every 5 years I was going through an acquisition through this cycle, and by large companies, and quitting and then joining another startup. So when the last acquisition happened in 2018, I decided that I need to do something different, which was to start my own company where I am executing on our own vision, which combined what we have learned from cloud computing and also makes it possible for the workloads like AI/ML, because they are a reality now. In addition, what we aspired to do was not to just build great products, but also to build great work culture where people are motivated that what they work on and also where they work. So we wanted to bring cloud native development to enterprises by supporting enterprise workloads. My other co-founder is actually the creator of Apache OpenWhisk, which is an open source serverless platform. So we got together, leveraged our collective domain knowledge, and started working on eliminating the technical and operational challenges that are with serverless today. The next question you had was regarding the name. Where did the name come from? So the name actually is a play on words. It is Nimbus plus Bella. So Nimbus is cloud and Bella is beautiful. So we are actually making the cloud beautiful, not just for a few cloud experts, but for developers of all skill sets. So it's a beautiful cloud. And in addition, it happens to be a butterfly. So our icon is a butterfly. So Nimbella is a beautiful butterfly. And also a beautiful cloud.
So thanks for sharing the story and also the whole vision behind the company. Now let's talk about the tech part. Can you talk about the technologies that you are developing there? Also, if you can talk about what does your offering look like? Is it product? Is it services? And if you may, if you are either leveraging or consuming or using any open source code base for your technologies.
So let's start with serverless promise, okay? The promise of serverless is to relieve the developer from all infrastructure burdens. So the developer has to work only on adding business value. But all the serverless platforms operated by public clouds today are great for stateless workloads, where there is no transient state saved. Therefore, managing state is back to the responsibility of the developer. And hence, we are back again to managing infrastructure and not delivering to the promise. At Nimbella, we leverage open source function engine of Apache OpenWhisk, which is an open source serverless platform, and we run on Kubernetes. What we have done is created a product which is not just serverless compute, but is also serverless memory and storage. So we provide an integrated key value store and we also integrate with underlying cloud services needed to build an application with automatic state management. So that is the technology of building stateful serverless applications. And the reason it is important is because in serverless computing, the application doesn't control the location of the functions. So it can result into, and I'm going to go a little bit technical here, it can result into O of n or n squared, depending on the case, And since n is very high in case of the functions, then compared to VMs, this becomes a problem at scale. So with Nimbella's platform, we manage locality of compute and storage, and it can only be managed by the platform and not by the user to guarantee co-location of compute and storage. Does that answer your first part of the question?
It does answer my question. And you mentioned a couple of open source technologies that you're leveraging. Are you also engaging and involving or contributing to those projects, or you're only using at this point?
Oh, we're definitely involved in these projects. We will upstream. We are upstreaming. We have open sourced our command line completely. We also upstream to the open source project of Apache OpenWhisk. My co-founder Roderick Rabba is very, very involved in the community. So we are doing everything that we can with a small team. And as we grow more, we are going to upstream even more.
And you also mentioned that as part of platform, the platform makes a lot of decisions. That's what happens with the platform. It is kind of opinionated versus giving users a lot of flexibility and choice. But in the cloud native world, especially, when we do talk about serverless and all those technologies, a lot of users are mixing and matching a lot of, they're pulling a lot of pieces from different places. That's what the whole multi-cloud, hybrid cloud story is all about. So can you talk a bit about the platform itself? And while you do offer your own stack, how do you allow your users, customers, to be able to integrate whatever other tools they are using?
Oh, absolutely. So we know, like, for instance, we know developers are very passionate about their IDE. Okay. You can't ask them, okay, use this IDE versus this one. You can't. Okay. So what we have done is we have augmented their development environment by providing a command line, for instance, and which can work on a command line as well as in browser. So we don't tell them to use any of our tooling, which kind of interferes with what they're doing. It's only augmentation. Also, the developers are using dozen services in the cloud. We currently, and one of your question was whether we are a service or we are a product. We are actually both. The reason we are both is because developers want instant gratification. So when you go on Nimbella.com, you can sign up, and we run on the underlying public clouds. We run on Google Cloud, and Amazon today will be running on Azure also. But at this point in time, you can run your service, and we abstract the underlying public cloud. So the user doesn't have to know what cloud they are running. But they can integrate with any cloud service through APIs. Some of the services we have abstracted. So, for instance, Google Buckets, which is the object storage, we have abstracted, and it's available within the platform in a declarative sense. So they can call it directly, or they can use the APIs and use it. So developers have full flexibility of how they have been developing to use our platform and use what the platform is good at, serverless compute and serverless memory and storage, and create a whole application and not just functions.
Now, of course, you answered a lot of questions there. And one was that the value that you bring to your customers. So yes, developers, you can suggest technology to them, but they will say, nope, we want to use what we want to use. So the world is changing. But serverless space, the cloud native space, is a very crowded, very busy space. So while Nimbella does bring a lot of unique value, but can you talk about what are you bringing to the whole ecosystem itself? What unique value you're bringing? And I will actually break it easy because so that there are two different questions. So let's first talk about looking at the busy space it is, looking at the crowded space it is, how you kind of I don't like the word differentiate, but still, how do you differentiate yourself for a lot of other players?
That is a great question. And cloud native space is definitely very crowded with mixed messaging. There's just so many messages, it's hard to decipher who's doing what. Our value proposition is twofold, okay? And that's how we differentiate: portability and developer experience. We sell to engineering leaders and to developers. And you don't really sell to developers. I mean, developers have to come to a conclusion that this is a good thing to use. And what we saw is, we have several thousand developers using our hosted service today, where they're developing their own service, their own products, their own use cases, their own applications. They're working on it, and we get a lot of feedback from this. So we learned a ton from them. But what the engineering leaders care about is portability, because they don't want to be logged into a particular cloud vendor. Because cloud was one place where you could actually code once and run in the cloud and run anywhere, but that's not what's happening. Because when you go into a cloud, you're kind of locked into that cloud, because you're using so many services, you're using so many cloud APIs of that particular vendor that you're locked in. With our platform, what we have created is a uniform programming model and abstractions. So any enterprise can operate in the cloud of their choice, even private cloud, with one click today. So that is the product aspect of it, where you can deploy it in your own cloud. So it supports your multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud strategy. The pain point that we are addressing for this engineering leader or IT leader is to provide their developers the same cloud native experience across clouds without the management headaches. Okay, so that is our value proposition to a engineering leader or an IT leader. Now let's unbox the developer experience value prop, because the developers only care about how it saves time and how it makes their life easy. So what we do is we provide customization. We support bespoke runtimes, including containers, tunable programming models, and with integrated storage such as block storage and key value storage, it makes it really, really simple to actually create and run an application on Nimbella. The pain point here that we are addressing for a developer is the complexity of cloud in developing a stateful application, so that a developer has to only focus on what they love most, which is developing application logic.
One thing more that since you're talking about, build process deployment, that CI/CD or the CD is going to be a very critical piece, because when we live in this, cloud native world, you are pushing a lot of changes. Also, security becomes a very important discussion there. You don't want security to be an afterthought. It has to be part of the developer's pipeline. So can you talk about what impact Nimbella will have in the build and deploy process, that pipeline for developers?
Nimbella actually makes the build and deploy process very, very simple for the developers. So if a developer is on our managed and hosted service, we have like a 60-second experience where when you sign up, you don't just get an account, and you don't just get managed compute, but you get an SSL domain, you get a CDN, you get a block storage, you get a key value store, you get integrated developer tooling with logging and monitoring. Once that account is created, the developer can build or clone a startup project from a public GitHub. All of this is done within minutes. So that is the developer experience. And since it's share and deploy from GitHub, they can actually do continuous development, and you are developing as if you're developing in the cloud. And when you're building the application, the serverless storage is all declarative. So if you just want a concept of a key value store, you're just able to use it, not think about where it's provisioned, how it's backed up. So if you look at it from that responsibility standpoint, logic is the responsibility of the developer, which it should be. And read and write state is completely managed by a system. And now we talk about the deployment end. Using our open source CLI or browser-based developer workbench, the developer can deploy the entire application, not just functions. So we're not just talking about serverless functions. And that's why actually Nimbella is not about functions. Nimbella is about serverless applications or APIs. And you can push this complete application with one command. Nimbella allows developer to create a local Nimbella cloud also on their desktop for offline development. And when the developer is fully satisfied, they can push it with one command. So what this enables them is actually cloud native development, whether it's online or offline, and they can develop and test and run their application.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that. And now one thing before we wrap up, I want to know is, if you look at the serverless space, there are still, a lot of challenges, have been tackled, a lot of problems have been solved, but there are still a lot of challenges that still remain for developers, DevOps teams. So can you talk about what are the challenges that you see are still there that the community or the company like Nimbella still have to tackle, still have to solve? Can you talk about that aspect?
Yes, serverless is a relatively new computing paradigm, so it's still evolving, I would say. One of the challenges that we saw very early on was the stateless workload support only, and we are solving that. The other challenge that we see is the complexity, the cloud complexity that it brings, because you are assembling pieces of it. You, as a developer, you have to take care of this and that, tracing, monitoring, debugging, all of that. So we kind of handling that by providing an integrating developer tooling set. But there are other challenges that will come because as you tackle more and more workloads, okay, there will be different challenges that will come with it. But if we handle data and if we handle the portability, we can handle the other challenges also very easily. Like, for instance, if you think of Edge, okay, Edge is continuously expanding. Okay, and as we are looking into it, we want to pack more density, more compute density at the edge. In serverless, you actually are creating these functions in these containers. So if you have to create container for every function, the edge is not much of a reality at that time because it requires a lot of compute at the edge. So what is evolving from this is edge functions, where you can actually pack a lot of compute density, and they are containerless edge functions. So that is also an evolution of serverless, which is happening. I mean, the technology is a work in progress, and we are also working on it. And that is one challenge that we are going to handle as we go forward.
I would also love to know a bit about some of the use cases. Exciting, of course, there are so many use cases, but exciting use cases. And of course, if you can name some customer, or if you can just give some example of who is leveraging these technologies and your platform.
Okay, that is a wonderful question, Swapnil, because it kind of it's proof is in the pudding. So one of the use cases that is very popular with our system is DevOps automation within collaboration systems. So we currently have an integration with a collaboration system like Slack and Teams, which enables a developer to develop and run serverless functions and stateful APIs within these platforms. So we are deployed in Fortune 100 companies. Unfortunately, I cannot name them at this time. So they can unlock the benefits of serverless from a shared CLI available through these systems. And during this pandemic, the use of collaboration system is at the highest level. So having anything that is available at their fingertips, developers' fingertips, and the other user fingertips, which is so easily consumable, is actually nirvana. So that is one use case. The other one of the customer that I can name is actually a medical device e-commerce company, Caputron, and they have been our customer for some time. They use Nimbella because it provided their developers the ability to build a stateful serverless backend. So here the need for state was there. Without needing to learn new skills, without managing infrastructure, and without explicitly operating and securing data stores that may contain the transient confidential information. So the developer tooling that was provided to them actually accelerated their delivery tenfold, and they enabled their small team to build, collaborate, and test the entire application in the cloud. So this is a medical device company. This is not a technology company, but a company that could use technology to their advantage and be able to go to the market very quickly.
One thing before we wrap this up is that developers, as we discussed, are at the center of this movement that is going on. Can you talk about the access, the pricing, the availability of your platform to developers? Is there any way they can just experiment with it, play with it, and then maybe decide to, become paying customers?
Yes, absolutely. And we come from the open source world, and we believe that nobody should lock themselves into something that they haven't tried or worked on. So we have a freemium model. So there is a forever free tier. And it's a pretty generous tier. Any developer can go sign in. And as I said, it's a 60-second developer experience. Okay, you go sign in, you get an account with everything, all bells and whistles. Okay, and it's a very generous free tier. If you want to just develop a hobby application, you can go develop an hobby application before you're ready to commit. And actually work with a team. If you work with a team, you can sign up for the pro offering, or if you really want a license for your enterprise and you want to operate in your virtual private cloud, then you sign up for the enterprise. But you have complete all bells and whistles account with a free account.
Anshu, thank you so much for talking to me today, not only about the company, but also how the serverless space is evolving. And I look forward to talk to you again. So thank you.
Thank you, Swapnil, for having me. It was a wonderful opportunity to be here.